small businesses, presented to you by the Youth Cyber Defenders. Youth Cyber Defenders, take it away.
Yeah, so as you know, as he's excellently introduced us, we are Youth Cyber Defender. Whoa! And the title of our paper, which we will be presenting, is Digital Blind Spots, a field study of common website insecurities in small businesses.
My name is Jane. I am a junior at Oregon Episcopal School.
My name is Andy. I'm a sophomore at Jesuit High School.
I'm Lucas. I am a sophomore too at Calvin Gable.
And my name is Alan. I'm a freshman at Jesuit High School.
So this paper is basically the culmination of several cybersecurity assessments that we carried out for local small businesses in the Portland area.
Who we are? We are local high school students, and you might think, we're so young, how are we even qualified to be here? Well, many of our members have spent various years doing different cybersecurity competitions or other events like trainings. We've done Cyber Patriot and PICO CTF competitions. We've also attended training camps like Northwest Cyber Camp and National Cyber Challenge Camp.
And obviously, you might still be thinking, they're little kids, right? They're high schoolers. And so maybe they've just been goofing around and just showing up and clocking in and clocking out. So I think it's also important to note that we actually have several papers published in conferences across the nation, including being a keynote speaker at the NICE K-12 Cybersecurity Education Conference, which, as the name suggests, is a pretty large national cybersecurity conference.
I want you guys to think of any local businesses you support, whether it be like a mom and pop shop or like a food truck. Likely, they're vulnerable to cyber attacks. You see, the truth is that over 80% of local businesses in America are not prepared for cyber attack. Adding on to this, 73% of small businesses report that they've experienced cyber attacks in the past. Traditionally, cybersecurity assessments are unaffordable. They can cost upwards of $100,000. Additionally, 78% of small businesses still fear that a cybersecurity attack could end their business. This is where our solution comes in. We've done free assessments so far, and this helps our Youth Cyber Defender members to get more experience in the cybersecurity field. We are taking donations though.
Yeah, so our solution provides affordable structured cybersecurity assessments for small businesses who often don't have the resources or experience needed. What makes our approach unique is that all of these assessments are conducted by high school students who are trained and mentored by experienced cybersecurity professionals. This ensures business is meaningful and that students gain real-world experience in the growing field. Our work is guided by the Educational Cybersecurity Assessment Framework for Small Businesses, or ECAP. This makes sure that all assessments are consistent with each other.
So what is this educational cybersecurity assessment framework for small businesses? So it was created by a member of ours several years ago, and so since then we've basically been following this framework to conduct any and all assessments that we do for small businesses. And so it's fairly simple. It's pretty much like a 4-step plan. First, we gain the authorization of a small business that we would like to assess, because without it, it's clearly unethical, dangerous, and just plain wrong. And then we basically plan out, when are we doing this? What is the scope? What websites can we test? What would you like us to look at? And following that, we really get into the actual assessment, the meat of what we do. And so first we have reconnaissance. And so here we go into the website. Maybe we create a fake account. Maybe we look through each of their web pages, see, here, this might be insecure. That's a little weird. What can we do with it to exploit a vulnerability? And maybe we can find some websites which shouldn't be public. And so following on from the reconnaissance step, we can get into the execution step rather. And so here we really do most of like the important attacks. So if you've ever watched a movie with a hacker on it, that's probably the things that you will be seeing if you watched us in the execution step. So here we do all of the big vulnerabilities. So here we can do SQL injection. Oftentimes we leverage some insecure parameters to gain access to their databases. And so pretty much the execution step is where we take a very active approach to trying to exploit their vulnerabilities that might be in a small business's online presence. And then afterwards, of course, because it is an assessment that we're doing for a small business, we write up a report. Generally, we set up a meeting and we talk through the vulnerabilities that we found and some remediation techniques, basically to fix whatever we found.
Yeah, so our case studies are that we went through multiple, we've done multiple security assessments in the past couple of years. And then we've also looked at, they've opened multiple small businesses in the Portland area, and through these, thankfully we haven't found many large incidents, but we found like a couple severe issues such as weak password encryptions or like passwords listed in plain text. And then we've also found over 7,000 users and their passwords and their like other email addresses. And then now we'll cover the 4 main vulnerabilities that we found through various assessments on small businesses.
The first case study is on unsafe file upload. Have you ever tried to print something and the printer says, nope, we can't take this file type? That's the printer protecting itself. Because in one of the assessments we did, we found a file upload feature that allows you to upload any file, which makes it really unsafe. To do this, we had to get a fake account to be able to see the user interface during our reconnaissance section. And when we went into the execution section, we uploaded a file with this code. It seems really simple. We found it on Google. Like, this shows that it's a really easy way to set up this file and hit this vulnerability. To do that, we did a simple URL manipulation. This way, by clicking on the file and sending it some commands, we were able to see the file uploads of other users. And some of them were signed, some of them had their names, had their medical details, so not a very good time for them. Then, because that was a really simple file, we wanted to do a more difficult one. This time, we uploaded a reverse shell in PHP. This way, we could exploit their system and have an interactive system on our end to be able to compromise their hosting server, which this company in particular had 4 other websites also based on this server, so we were also able to compromise those websites. How do we fix this? Well, like that printer, it would be a pretty easy fix if you just made the website check for what kind of file it takes. While this might be annoying for the user, it would greatly close this really open vulnerability and make it easy for the small business to secure this vulnerability.
The second large issue which we found was basically all the issues which can be lumped under the umbrella that is improper authorization. And so pretty much this is when a website or the backend code simply fails to check the authorization of a user or the validity of data and whether or not it's safe. And so one very pertinent example that we actually came across was this example. It's screenshotted up there. It's a little bit blurry, so I don't know if you can make out anything. But effectively, what we see here is we created a profile, and this is the profile editing page on the website. And then above in red, I can barely make it out, so I don't know if you guys can. But it's basically, it is a get parameter, an HTTP get parameter, which is the ID of the user or profile. And so pretty much how it works, if you're unfamiliar, is based on this ID in the URL, the backend will basically give the data related to that ID, and then thus, each different profile's information is displayed. The issue with authorization here was that all we had to do here was change the ID number in the URL, and some other user's profile page just popped up with all their information, no restraints. And this clearly is a pretty large issue, I would say, in my opinion. Just being able to edit, delete, just remove anybody's profile if you can guess their ID. And this is a similar example, which was a little bit more difficult to crack, but was still very insecure. And so here is a very similar method. So we created a profile, we opened the profile webpage, and here we also tried to send a request. So in the webpage, we changed a parameter of the profile, and then using this tool, Burp Suite, or Burp, we captured this traffic. And then using the repeater tool, it's very blurry, but it's right here. I can't show it because it's somebody's personal information. But we edited the ID parameter inside this request to someone else's, and thus we could gain the information, we can edit the information, we can remove their profile, and pretty much compromise almost all of the data, which is a pretty big issue in my opinion. And this is another improper authorization issue, which is a little bit less severe, but still pretty important, which is a lot of small businesses have websites which aren't listed like in the GUI for any of the web pages, but they will pop up and you can simply click on the URL and then it will open up. And this is, for example, a upload website which has a bunch of uploads for programs and plans, and I believe we found some resumes on there, which is, I think, this overall stuff which maybe shouldn't be shared in public to anybody who has a computer and can open the URL. So, as the name suggests, improper authorization is an issue which is pretty easily resolved, and that's by instituting proper authorization. So, for example, with URL parameters, you have to ensure to check that the user that is trying to access this information is maybe admin or maybe someone involved with the small business, and also that their request is valid. So pretty much no user should be trusted unless they've been authorized, and no data should be trusted unless it's been authorized. And then also, of course, websites which have sensitive information shouldn't be publicly accessible to anybody and everybody.
Yeah, so the third case is data at rest, where which is an insecurity because when data stays at rest, it's like an easy target for hackers to access. And then weak hashing algorithms such as MD5 are no longer secure because they can be cracked or collided, which means that two different hashes have the same output. And then this is only protected only when MD5 is effectively vulnerable. And then even worse, some of these systems are still storing passwords in plain text. And then a common way that attackers reach data is by exploiting SQL injection vulnerabilities in web applications by manipulating database queries, which allows attackers to gain access to MySQL databases. And then we found, this is a list of a bunch of passwords and usernames that we found. And then to fix this, we use SQLmap, which is a open source penetration testing tool, which allows us to detect and exploit SQL injection vulnerabilities, and it can be used to take back control of a back end of a MySQL database. And then the next one is Hydra, which is used as a password cracking.
Here.
Which is used as a password cracking app, I guess, and then it guesses usernames and passwords. And then we also use Medusa, which is another tool that uses brute force to crack passwords. And then MySQL 8.0 supports safe data hashing, and then instead of having the looser model, they should implement this model. And then to make their hashes more secure, they should hash everything in SHA 256 or SHA 512.
Yeah, so our fourth case is SQL injection. I want you guys to imagine there's a clerk who follows instructions exactly as you say them. If somebody slips in a forged instruction that says show me everything, then information gets leaked. That's essentially what SQL injection is. A website treats a user's input as part of a database command. It usually starts at a pretty insignificant part of a website like an ID parameter or a search box and can escalate quite quickly from one entry point to full database access. So on the left here, we can see Burp Suite. This is an application that testers use to edit and capture HTTP requests. We can see it calling a get command to the history report directory. The ID part is boxed in red, which hackers can penetrate. They can send maybe a small query or I don't know, just something really insignificant or weird to try to get an SQL error or some odd output. On the right here, we have SQL Map's terminal output specifically. And we can see that it says that it confirms that the back end of the website is on MySQL. And it lists all of the databases that it uses, like information schema, MySQL, and so on and so forth. So to fix this problem, we have two really simple fixes that anybody can implement, really. First, we can use prepared statements. So this prevents user input from being interpreted as a SQL command or SQL code. This prevents this just forces user input to be interpreted as data instead of code. And then secondly, we can check every input and only allow the ones that are in the specific format that we want. So for example, an ID parameter should only be an integer. If the input is anything other than that, then we can just reject it. So these two really simple fixes can fix gaping holes in website security systems.
So in conclusion, many small businesses often deprioritize, often not because they don't have enough, they don't care, but because of skill and or resource restraints. Tight budgets and small teams to pressure to quickly deliver all tend to push back security. The 4 issues that we found during our assessments were unsafe file upload, improper authorization, data at rest, and SQL.
Our main next steps is outreach, like talking at this conference, writing other papers. This way we can reach more areas as well as more small businesses that we can secure. And since we're all high school students, we use this opportunity to gain more experience and improve the field in general. Thank you for listening. Do you have any questions? And we have a website, and also if you have your own small business, you can also ask us for an assessment.
Were there other attack vectors that you considered besides the main 4?
Yes, there were a lot of other vulnerabilities, but they were either less obvious and took more time to find, or didn't have as much risk once they were broken, so we didn't mention them as much.
And then I think another thing which is of note is that these 4 were ones that we saw time and time again, right? That were common with a huge amount, and some other vulnerabilities maybe maybe they were big issues, but oftentimes they were kind of rare. And these 4 were some very large issues, which we found to be also very common amongst small businesses and their websites.
How did you guys decide which tools to use when remediating the issues for the case?
So sometimes we have some tools like Nessus, which are just general scans, which is good practice to basically run no matter what the website. But oftentimes, for example, using Burp Suite or using, you could call it a tool, but trying to do a SQL injection, which is it's not its own tool, but it's a way of exploiting a vulnerability. We try to look at, for example, if we see an input field or a file upload, which could potentially be insecure, and then we can dig deeper into it using SQL Map, for example, and we can see how can we use this this commonly insecure part of a web page, how can we maybe go from this little crack in the wall all the way to their entire database and all of their information.
Yeah, like adding on to Lucas, like Burpsuite really helps us like see what's going on the website. So like let's say like you enter something into like an input box, like where's that being sent, what's going on specifically, like the inner workings of everything.
You know I was going to ask a question, right? No, so your customer focus is what we would put under like small medium business SMBs and whatnot. They don't have the luxury of large enterprise. So from their standpoint, sometimes they're using the native software. I have my Microsoft Security Shield on, or they outsourcing their IT, and their IT person might be doing something security. You're coming along and you're identifying some really great vulnerabilities, but they don't speak the language. So what's been your experience that you have to talk in a very non-cybersecurity, non-technical term to tell them that protection they had was okay, but you're finding things above and beyond that?
So a lot of times, right, we talk in terms of website building software. So for example, there was this one time we were in a meeting where we were going over a report, and we basically, after breaching their system, we noticed that all of their passwords were encoded in MD5, which it's a hash, right? So it has some effect for security, but at the same time, it's relatively incredibly weak in comparison to, say, SHA 512 or 256. And so pretty much we talked to him about his previous understanding of MD5 being secure, and like how basically SHA 256 and 512 were improvements, and basically how it could benefit the security of the system.
So you had to translate it into something they could understand.
Generally, we talked with and worked with a lot of institutions which had a semi academic focus, or they had quite a number of people who knew at least the basics of coding and software, and so they weren't a complete novice to the whole field of cybersecurity and computer science, but at the same time there were some areas where we did have to maybe talk through it a little bit less in terms which is generally understood by cybersecurity.
Do you mean like when like somebody like completely outsources their website building? Is that what you meant?
Yeah, in the case you were just talking about, they might have enough knowledge of cryptography to say MD5 and say you're covered. Me as your provider means I'm putting things that are good enough, but unless they know, oh, SHA-128 is now outdated, no longer in use, what does the 128 mean to the versus a 256? So at some point, the provider could be conveying a message of we're confident you're secure, but that provider might not ever go out and consult with, say, true cybersecurity.
I see. So I don't think we've done any like assessments for like people that completely outsourced it. Like the people that we've worked with so far at least like have some knowledge. So that was a bit helpful.
Did the companies that you consulted with, did they end up fixing these issues? How did that go?
I think one of them recreated their whole website, or when we were looking at it, they might have been in the process of. So I think they did that. But since after our time period that we like communicated with them, that is our assessment time.
Yeah.
If we were to do any more like vulnerability testing after that time, it would be illegal. So unless we have talked to them, then we don't know what is going on.
Cybersecurity doesn't ever sleep. Do you have some type of test infrastructure where it's a new version of, you know, a cyber tool, or it's an upgrade and operating system? Do you have like some test environment where you're seeing if there's what new vulnerabilities, what new security?
So like we use VMware, like we use the
Okay.
Linux systems on the VM. So
So you're just spinning up whatever flavor.
yeah, so like
system you
sometimes we'll like meet together just like play around with these tools and stuff.
Are you using any open source tool if you have to do like a denial of service or something like that to see impacts? There's a lot of great open source tools out there, so.
Yeah, currently we're still like in a burgeoning stage, right? We've done like a fair number of assessments, but we haven't done a huge amount, and we also don't have a lot of people or a lot of time. We're pretty busy, so there are definitely a lot of tools which we have yet to look into, and which we definitely should in the future, especially as part of our future steps.
So, I came in late, sorry about that. The other session I was in got canceled. So maybe you already said this, but I don't know if you could say what your group is about. Like, is this something you guys started or something that you joined? How did you guys get into this?
We're Youth Cyber Defender. Our group originally started doing cybersecurity competitions like Cyber Patriot, and through the years we've done other competitions or done some training like summer camps.
Okay.
So that's how we started mostly, and then we transitioned to be more helpful for our community rather than just competition.
Cool.
I have a question for you four up there. After doing all these case studies and stuff, what's one thing you enjoy about doing this project?
I mean, like for me, like let's say like I do some digging around, like I just find like a huge pile of like information. I feel like that's like I've struck gold kind of moment, you know. That's like a pretty fun part of it.
Yeah, echoing his sentiment. Yeah, it's just like finding, that one crack in the wall that you know is there, and grabbing your chisel and just like going at it, and like finally getting a hole big enough that you can walk through is just, something which I think brings me a lot of satisfaction when doing these assessments.
In the different like trainings and competitions we do, it's all like for pretend. So we find something really cool and break their website, or like, oh, it's just for pretend. But now real people are involved. We basically secured a bunch of users, people we know. It feels really different when it's real. So that's my favorite part of this.
I like it because it's always kind of fun where you're gonna find like things that you're not supposed to find on the website.
Hopefully you guys keep this up for good and your white hat.
Yeah,
The good hackers are the white hat hackers and not the black or whatever.
Don't turn evil, kids.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's also just like, a big part of like our whole mission, and also the framework is it's not only, securing small businesses and helping them with an area which oftentimes they don't have a lot of knowledge in or the ability to do anything about, but on the other end, it's also helping us immensely. Like, maybe we're not getting rich, we haven't been paid yet, but it's just such a great experience, in my opinion, at least, for me, to be a young student, a high schooler, and do something which a lot of high schoolers can't do, which is real assessment for a real company.
Yeah, super impressive.
That's it. Any other questions?